Now we've had a look at introduction, so today let's have a look at how we can focus on the body paragraphs and the conclusion, the rest of the essay in Task 2 writing. So this video today is on the cause, effect, solution essays, and then the following one will be about argument essays. In terms of task response for cause, effect, cause, solution, and effect solution essays, what we need to think about is what is good task response. So we're going to have a look first at what task response is, and then we'll give you some examples of those different types of essays that we have already looked at in introduction. So how is task response marked? First of all, the length of the answer. Now that should be 250 words about for task 2. Sometimes people ask me, can I write too many? Nope, but can you? No problem if you write 300. The only problem is time. Can you write that in within, really only 30 minutes, because you've got to check and prepare your answer as well. So are all parts of the prompt discussed? Because that means the question, the prompt means the question. So we've got to make sure that we've discussed everything that the question asks us to. We should be on topic. The answers and the ideas, the points, the examples should all be relevant to the question. And those ideas, those points need to be extended and explained. We want to avoid overgeneralized ideas and give well-supported examples. Now, those things may be a bit confusing. When we look at some examples now, we will focus on those things, overgeneralized arguments, and the opposite, a well-supported argument. And we need a clear position throughout the response. That is more important in an argument essay, but also in these cause, effect, cause, solution essays. We need to know what you are talking about. The examiners need to know that clearly. So here's the first question, the overweight children. This is the cause effect essay. Why are children becoming overweight and how is that affecting children? So we've already looked at an introduction in the previous video, so that's the same introduction you saw before. Now we're going to look at the body paragraphs one by one and focus on them. So we see the first body paragraph here where their first point is about poor diet. So this is good. Everything in blue, remember, is good. That's a nice short introduction to the paragraph. It tells the reader that's the main point, and then that idea is explained. And then they give examples. And notice not just one example, they're giving 1, 2, 3 good examples there. And then they're relating that back directly to the question that that kind of food is unhealthy and fattening. And then they move on to the second idea. This problem is not only due to eating out, but also the type of diet many children have at home. So then you must explain what you mean by that. What do you mean by the food they're eating at home? So they do that in the next. They explain it by talking about processed food. And then they're saying, back to the question again, that processed food is high in fat. So that's making their children fatter. So that's good. That's a good cause paragraph. 2 ideas, 2 main points, that's heaps, and then they've explained them well and given examples. So they are well supported arguments there. Now let's have a look on the other side about how that's affecting the children. So before I start, the topic sentence is just saying that this is a problem, and then they've talked about health related diseases, and then they're explaining diabetes and what that might mean for the child. So that's clearly answering the question, how is it affecting their children? And then they've got a nice linking phrase here where they say not only this, but the continued, but often experience bullying. So then it becomes a psychological or mental problem. So they've switched between 2 ideas there, which is good, but nice and clearly linked together. And then they give a very brief conclusion. As always, a short conclusion's good in IELTS writing. So they talk about the 2 main points from the cause paragraph, fast food and poorly prepared food. They then relate that back to the question, which is why are children becoming fatter? And then the last sentence is just recapping that effect paragraph by talking about physical and mental problems. So this is a good answer. It's directly focused on the question, and the paragraphing is clear. There's good well-supported examples. So this would get a high mark for task response for a cause-effect essay. Just a little addition they could put at the end there. Maybe they could mention this. Sometimes this is a good, very final step where you just say, if it's a problem essay, which this is, you just say, if we solve these problems, it will be better, or we want to stop this problem becoming worse. That kind of final sentence is not really necessary. On the other hand, if you don't have enough words, you think you've got time left, then maybe you can have a future suggestion at the end. But it doesn't directly relate to the question. Now let's focus on the other side now, where we're looking at cause and solution, and this time we're going to be focusing on some mistakes in this essay. So this is the youth crime increasing. So this is a cause-solution essay. Why is youth crime increasing, and what are some suggestions or solutions? So let's have a look at this first body paragraph here. And then there's a paragraph up here about solutions, and then a conclusion. So that's just an overview so you can see what we're focusing on. What we're going to do now is look at that first body paragraph. Now, if you looked, don't go back, it's too easy. But just have a check here, what is missing in the red? I'll give you a clue that, that's highlighted red's important too. So we see that it wasn't a single factor, it was two factors that this paragraph is about. So we must be clear in our topic sentence. That's important for your task response. That is not a clear position. Okay? So that helps us when we're mentioning exactly what's in the body paragraph. That certainly helps. And it also helps with coherence and cohesion. The second red dots further down the essay, what they need there is to relate it back to the question. That idea was okay, but it's becoming a bit generalized. So we need to remember what's the question. We need to keep our answers on topic. So the blue writing, consequently the child may start spending time with the wrong type of people, is a very good addition to that sentence, because then we're going back to the crime. We're mentioning crime. And the same thing with the last idea, that this is a very good example of something that's very generalized. Poverty around the world. How does that relate to this question? It's not relating exactly to this question. So we need to describe how poverty is affecting it. And again, coming back to crime with the illegal point mentioned there. So have a look at the solution paragraph now. Again, we see the red brackets down the bottom. What is missing from there? And here are the answers. So in terms of that middle idea too, the severe punishments, you could give examples of what those punishments may be. With the parent one, they should have explained that more and talk about how they should be punished even. So by adding those things there, examples, and explaining the idea a little bit more, you're making your ideas more well supported. And again, that helps you get a higher mark. So let's have a look at this conclusion and see what might be the problem with this conclusion. So you have a read of that conclusion, bold and bold there. So hopefully you see that that paragraph is off topic. It's a conclusion. It is an idea. It relates to the topic, but it's in the wrong place. Up there where we had possibly give examples, that's where that sentence should be, not in the conclusion. So this is a good example of a candidate who doesn't quite understand the purpose of a conclusion. So a conclusion should be finishing up your argument. There should not be new ideas in a conclusion. So here is a good example of a conclusion. You'll notice it's very similar to the last cause-effect essay. But in this cause-solution one, so first of all, we see the first two ideas over to the left. They have been explained, and then the two main ideas for the solutions are explained as well. So that's a nice, simple way to write an effective conclusion, though. Now, what we're going to do with this question, so effect and solution overview. So this is the overpopulation idea. So what are some of these problems and how can the government and individuals solve these problems? So remember from the pre-writing from the introduction videos, this essay is effects, not causes, the effects of these problems and what can governments and individuals do to solve these problems. So there's 3 parts to this question really. This is just an overview of what we're going to be looking at. So because there's 3 parts to the question, the person has written 3 paragraphs in the middle. You don't really need to do that, but that's a good way. And that's what the essay should look like. Now let's focus in on some of those paragraphs. So the first body paragraph, the effects here. Now what might be the problem with the essay, with this paragraph? Can you see any problems? Yes, here they are. There is no topic sentence. So that's important. We need a topic sentence for each paragraph so the reader, the examiner, can understand what you're trying to explain in your paragraph. Also, that last sentence is completely off topic. This person has misunderstood the question, maybe because they didn't do the pre-writing clearly. It's not the reasons why people move to cities. The question is, what does it cause? So that's in the wrong place. Maybe that kind of sentence could be in the introduction. In this kind of effect solution essay, you could talk about the causes in the introduction, but not in the body, and certainly not here. It's off topic and not related to the question. Now, in the body paragraphs here, now remember there's 2 body paragraphs for solutions, so we're going to look at them one by one. So this first one is pretty good, so we're not going to stop too much there. They just at the end could have said, in reducing crime. Now this second paragraph, it's very generalized. So this is an example of maybe an overgeneralized paragraph. The language and the grammar is fine. The idea is okay, but it's not really explaining what individuals can do. It's just saying they need to do the same things as the government. So that's not really a good specific answer. This would be a better. So we acknowledge that there's not much that the individuals can do with housing, but that crime is important and that the parents should do something there. So that's not finished, that paragraph, but something like that. Perhaps families in heavily populated areas could, and now you explain what you suggest they do to solve the problem. Now let's have a look at the conclusion. This is a good conclusion. We're not going to focus on it too much here. It is not a summary like before because they've not summarized all the main points, but they're just making a general suggestion that these things can be solved. A review of what we've done and focused on today. So the cause and effect essay. A good example, we just looked at everything in blue is good and red's bad. We looked at a high level example for cause and effect. There was nice clear ideas. Causes were explained, effects were explained. I mentioned effects there, which was physical and psychological or mental effects there. It was well explained and it had good examples throughout the essay. Also, we had a short, concise summary. That had a summary type finish. Cause and solution essay, we looked at a topic sentence problem there, that it was missing a point. There was some explanation and examples missing. Parts of it were not responding to the prompt or the question, and those mistakes were similar in both of the cause and solution middle paragraphs. There was a poor conclusion with the extra information, which should have been in the body paragraph, not the conclusion. With the effect and solution essay, again, we had a missing topic sentence. We had an idea that was clearly off topic. The person had misunderstood the difference between cause and effect. They could have related their ideas back to the question just a little bit more in the middle. There was some overgeneralizing in that third body paragraph, but a nice, clear, short conclusion. That's it for the cause, effect, solution type essays. The next video will be about how we can address task response in the argument essays, one-sided and two-sided.